This may have gotten a little out of hand. A week ago, I set out to make some Rice Krispie treats, and while I was making them, I tried to figure out if I could fancy them up in some way. So I decided I would do a tiny kitchen on it. Well, that's where things get complicated. For now, let's start at the beginning, the basic back-of-the-box recipe. It's super simple. It's 3 tablespoons of butter, a 10-ounce bag of marshmallows, 6 cups of the cereal. You melt the butter in a pan, melt the marshmallows in the butter, mix in the cereal, and then let it rest in a greased baking sheet. It's when I was doing that that I thought, how else could I make this? Could I make it fancy? I had some Cocoa Pebbles on hand, so I thought, well, let me make it with that. So I followed step by step, the same recipe, same volumes, but it wasn't right. Aside from the taste issue, which we'll get to in a second, there was a consistency issue. These were just too dense, and that comes down to the shape of the rice itself. You see, Rice Krispies are puffed rice, whereas the Pebbles, well, they're not. Not to mention the size. Rice Krispies are a medium grain rice, and the Pebbles are a long grain rice. All that does factor into your denseness issue. So what ends up happening is the long grains, they lay on each other even more, and you just get that density. But the taste was the big thing. See, it turned out that as you ate these, you didn't taste the chocolate until you were pretty much done. Why? I started by making a batch from Cocoa Krispies, and they were immediately better. There was no denseness issue. There was no chocolate delay. They were nice and fluffy. So why? Well, if we look at the cereal up close, we can actually see the difference. So the chocolate on both the Crispy and the Pebble is coated on afterwards, but there is a difference. On the Crispy itself, there's no extra coating. The chocolate is just on there. On the Pebble itself is where we get the difference. This one is really shiny, and it's like that because there's a sugar coating all over it. The sugar coating itself is meant to keep this from getting soggy in milk, but that causes an extra delay in getting to the flavor. So for a while we brainstormed on how to fix this problem. We figured, well, maybe you could put some chocolate drink mix in with the marshmallow when you're melting it, but that's a whole different issue itself. The thing with chocolates is every chocolate is a little bit different. So if you have a chocolate that's chemically similar to what's on the cereal, you'll probably be okay. But if you have one that's way drastically different or doesn't even contain any actual chocolate at all, you're just going to get met with this bitter, disjointed flavor that just doesn't work. But that was only one variation. I made a batch out of Fruity Pebbles, and it was intense. It was somehow like the process of turning it into a treat just amplified the fruitiness. It was just way too much. You needed more than just a cup of milk to cut that down. So, how did we fix that? Well, that was actually really simple. We just altered the recipe. So instead of doing 6 cups of Fruity Pebbles, we just did half and half, 3 cups of Krispies and 3 cups of Fruity. That allowed to convey the fruitiness and also not have it be overwhelming, just be nice. So far, though, we were only working with puffed rice cereals. I want to know if you could make something out of a round cereal. Could you? The answer to that is yes. And also, no. So my first attempt at doing a different cereal was to do one of my favorites, Reese's Puffs. And it did not end well. You see, the marshmallow ended up being the big problem. While it still coated everything, there was just too much of it. And a lot of it settled at the bottom of the pan, even though we squished everything together like the recipe said we were supposed to. So what happened? Well, it turns out that your science teacher was right, and surface area is kind of a big deal. I've got a cup each of Reese's Puffs and Rice Krispies. And if you take a really close look at both of them, you can sort of see where the difference is. The Rice Krispies are denser. There's much more of these in the cup than there is of the Reese's Puffs. And they've got all of these different points of contact where they're all laying on top of each other. The Reese's Puffs, the problem is the shape. They're a sphere. And while a sphere has a lot of surface area and it's great for a lot of different things in nature, it makes a terrible Rice Krispie treat because you don't get as many points of contact. Oh, and if you're thinking about it, the same thing happens for the Crunch Berries. It doesn't work right. Did you know someone tried to sue Captain Crunch over Crunch Berries? Anyway, it turns out that balls were not a good shape for making a treat. Well, sort of. You see, at the time of recording, if you go to the store, you can find mini versions of common cereals. And we found a box of Trix Minis. And I wanted to see if I could get these to work. And it was a little bit of doing, but we did get it. These work because even though they are round and we have that surface area point of contact issue, they're small enough that you get enough points of contact between them, kind of like that atom building kit you did in science class. I actually was able to get this to work by taking it all and using a round cake pan instead of your basic flat dish. This allowed for a taller stack, but more points of contact. And these are shockingly light. They're probably the lightest of the trees that we've made, even though they're the biggest. So we made these treats. We have to go back to the whole beginning here. Why did we want to make Rice Krispie treats? They're what I like to call the most dangerous snack. They live in that Goldilocks zone of not too sweet, not too plain, not too crunchy, not too soft, and they have a very benign but lovable flavor. You eat one and you go, wow, that was really good. I like that. I want exactly that again. And then you end up just eating more and more of them. And what's really interesting is honest to God, I would have lost money if you asked me to guess when Rice Krispie treats were made. I would have said the 50s because there was marshmallow in them. There was marshmallow in everything in the 50s. You made a pot roast, there was marshmallow in it. But no, these actually go back to 1938. The original recipe called for molasses or honey to put them together, but they were invented in the Kellogg's test kitchen to promote Rice Krispies. And they've been around ever since. And there's just something wonderful about the Rice Krispie treat. You can take it a little far, but that's part of the joy of cooking and playing in the kitchen. Now, you don't have to be like us here at Tiny Kitchen and make 8 million varieties. Although, if you really want to make a lot of friends really fast, you can do that. Our crew has doubled today, on the day we're filming this. But that is our deep dive into Rice Krispies. And I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of stuff. Everyone's got a recipe of adding chocolate or marshmallow or chips or whatever it is you want into it. And that's the joy of them. They're a canvas. Make your own food-based painting if the analogy doesn't fall apart too soon. I'm going to leave before it does. From me to you, good eating. Not very good. You guys want some? I know you do.